January 2026, the median price of a single-family home in the United States crossed $431,000. In 1965, that same house cost about $20,000. A factory worker bought it on one income, raised 3 kids, and retired with a pension. The job still exists. The house does too. The math doesn't. That's not the first time a currency quietly devoured a generation. And we already know how the story ends. History doesn't repeat, it patterns. This one is called the silent tax. It transfers wealth from the people who earn money to the people who issue it, without a single vote. Start in Rome in the year 64 AD. Emperor Nero needs money. The fire has just gutted the capital. The treasury is empty. So Nero does something quiet, almost invisible. He orders the silver denarius, the workhorse coin of the empire, minted slightly lighter with slightly less silver. Most Romans never notice. The coin still says denarius. It still buys bread. But the pattern has started. By the year 100, the denarius is roughly 85% silver. By 200, it's down to 50%. By 270, under Emperor Aurelian, the coin contains about 5% silver. The rest is copper, washed in a thin silver coating that flakes off in your hand. Soldiers riot. Merchants refuse the new coins. Inflation tears through the provinces. In 301 AD, Diocletian tries to fix it the way governments always try to fix it, by force. He issues the edict on maximum prices. Hundreds of goods, hundreds of capped prices. Bakers who charge too much are executed. The result? Goods vanish from markets. Black markets explode. The edict is dead within a decade. Rome had invented the silent tax. It would not be the last. The same thing happened 1,200 years later in England. In 1544, Henry VIII is broke. War with France, war with Scotland, the dissolution of the monasteries already spent. He turns to his mint master and orders what historians now call the Great Debasement. English silver coins, traditionally 92.5% pure, what we still call sterling, get cut. Then cut again. By 1551, the silver content of an English shilling has collapsed to about 25%. The king's own face, stamped on the new coins, wears off at the nose first because that's where the copper shows through. The English began calling Henry Old Copper Nose. Prices in England roughly doubled, then doubled again. By the end of the century after Henry, after Edward, the cumulative inflation surge approached 700%. Wages didn't keep up. Wages never keep up. Henry died rich. The English peasantry did not. The pattern jumped to paper in the late 1700s. In 1789, revolutionary France was bankrupt. The new government invented the assignat, a paper note backed supposedly by confiscated church land. They printed a few 100 million livres worth, then a few billion. By 1796, around 45 billion assignats were in circulation, and a loaf of bread cost what a small house had cost 7 years earlier. The notes were eventually burned in public, the printing presses smashed in the Place Vendôme. In 1797, the Bank of England suspended gold convertibility to fund the Napoleonic Wars. It was supposed to be temporary. It lasted 24 years. In 1862, the United States, deep in civil war, printed the greenback, paper dollars not redeemable in gold. By 1864, it took $2.58 in greenbacks to buy $1 in gold. 3 countries, 3 centuries, 1 mechanism, coins shaved, paper printed, wars financed, citizens quietly poorer. But the pattern didn't stop there. It got industrialized. Why does this keep happening? Why every empire, every century, every continent, because of a single word, seigniorage? In medieval Europe, seigniorage meant the small fee the lord of the mint kept for turning silver into coins. If a merchant brought in 100 ounces of silver, he got back 98 ounces worth of coins. The mint kept 2 ounces, honest profit, openly stated. Modern seigniorage is the same idea with the lights turned off. When a government prints a $100 bill, it costs roughly 14 cents to produce. The other 99.86 is pure profit, but only if someone, somewhere, accepts the bill as worth $100. Every new dollar created without new goods behind it is a slice taken from every existing dollar. It's not theft from a bank vault, it's theft from purchasing power. Think of it like this. Imagine a poker game with 10 players, each holding 10 chips. The dealer quietly prints 50 more chips and keeps them. Nobody's stack got smaller, but every chip on the table is now worth less. The dealer didn't take your chips, he just made yours mean less. That's the trick. That's the whole trick. And it works because of 3 structural facts. First, inflation is invisible day to day. Prices creep, they don't jump. Second, the benefit is concentrated. The cost is diffuse. The government gets the new money first, at full value, and spends it before prices adjust. By the time the bread costs more, the money is already in the contractor's pocket. Economists call this the Cantillon effect, named after an Irish banker who described it in 1730. Third, and this is the part that makes the pattern unbreakable from the inside. Inflation is a tax that requires no legislation. No vote, no accountability, no politician has to put their name on it. A 5% inflation year is functionally a 5% tax on every dollar held by every citizen. But there is no tax form. There is no protest. There is only the slow, quiet shrinking of what your money will buy. Now bring it forward. In August 1971, President Nixon went on television and announced that the United States dollar would no longer be redeemable for gold. He called it temporary. It was not. Every major currency on earth has been pure fiat, backed by nothing but trust, for over 50 years. In 2007, the Federal Reserve's balance sheet stood at roughly $870 billion. By 2015, after the financial crisis and 3 rounds of quantitative easing, it had crossed $4.5 trillion. By 2022, after the pandemic response, it peaked above $8.9 trillion. As of early 2026, after several years of slow runoff, reports suggest it remains near $6.7 trillion, still roughly 7 times its pre-2008 level. That is modern seigniorage, not coin shaving, not printing presses, keystrokes. The dollar that bought a loaf of bread in 1913 buys about 3 cents of that same loaf today. Roughly 97% of the dollar's purchasing power gone. A Big Mac that cost 45 cents in 1967 now runs over $5.50 in most American cities. A gallon of whole milk that cost about $1.10 in 1980 sits closer to $4.20 in 2026. These aren't accidents. They're the cumulative output of the silent tax, compounding for a century. And here's the part most people don't know. The famous 2% inflation target, the one every central bank in the developed world claims to follow as if it were a law of physics, was invented in 1990 by the Reserve Bank of New Zealand. The governor, Donald Brash, has openly said it was picked almost casually in a television interview without rigorous economic modeling. Within 15 years, the European Central Bank, the Bank of England, the Federal Reserve, and dozens of others had adopted it as gospel. 2% compounded over 50 years cuts a currency's purchasing power by 64%. That's the official goal. The unofficial result is harder to ignore. In 1965, the median American household ran on a single income, owned a home, and saved. In 2026, the median household runs on dual income, rents at record rates, and carries roughly $104,000 in total debt. The job didn't disappear. The house didn't disappear. The dollar disappeared underneath them. Same coin. Less silver. And that's where it gets uncomfortable. Can the pattern be broken? Honestly, almost never from the inside. The incentives are too strong. The accountability is too weak. But there are exceptions. The Deutsche Mark, from 1948 to 1999, held its purchasing power better than almost any modern currency. Because post-war Germany had lived through hyperinflation in 1923 and built a central bank with a single legal mandate: price stability. No employment target, no growth target, just stability. The Swiss franc held similar discipline until 2000, partly backed by gold reserves that exceeded 40% of the money supply. In both cases, the escape required the same ingredient: a population that had recently watched its currency die and refused to forget. That's the uncomfortable rule. Societies don't fix the silent tax through argument. They fix it through memory of catastrophe. And memory fades within 2 generations. Historically, when the pattern was visible, 3 things tended to preserve purchasing power: hard assets, productive land, and currencies tied to something a government couldn't print. The pattern doesn't end. The participants just rotate. Pattern confirmed. The silent tax is older than any constitution, older than any central bank, and it has never, in 2,000 years, stopped paying its collector. Now I want your take. Do you think this same pattern is unfolding today, or is this time truly different? Tell me your perspective in the comments. I'll see you in the next one.